Hey, everybody. I got some people listening in live and just wanted to um, do, not a quick, but a short recording, maybe up to a half an hour tops, about, what it is that we're up to with Chizzy. And I'll also point to other videos, so look in the description for more in-depth stuff. Um, and But what I want to cover here is really sort of the essence, and this is inspired by an opportunity to work with high school students on, the very issues that we grapple with within Chizzy. And so I'd like to, at least conceptually, even if we don't publish this video, uh, direct it towards, like, we're talking with an audience. We're talking with uh, teachers, students, administrators, and parents of these high school students. And, you know, there's really one of two approaches we could take with the high school students, and that is one is to do something that's very projects focused, like food healers or marine cloud brightening or whatever, and just take on a project, or Chizzy herself, they were taking on this project, and or multiple projects. And um, another approach would be just to go straight to the heart of the matter and say, look, we're in a polycrisis. Who here wants to know the truth about the polycrisis, right? And for those of you who don't want to know, well, we don't want to tell you either. But let's just be clear. Those who want to know and those who don't, in or out. Those who don't want to know, please leave now. And those who want to know, please stay. So the first filter is not, do you volunteer or not? Because a lot of these kids are going to volunteer for the first time. They're just becoming of the age at which, they can safely transport themselves around via public transportation or hitching a ride with an older student who's got a car or whatever. But they're just coming of age now. If it's adults that we're talking to, like someone 50 years old, the first question is, do you volunteer? And if you don't, then, we don't really have much to talk about, because what we're talking about is within the realm of volunteerism. For the high school students, now is their opportunity to volunteer. Just turning on transcription here. And of course, we're recording. We don't know for what audience. And so for the high school students, the first question is, do you want to know the truth about the polycrisis, which then translates to the action step. Do you want to seek the truth about the polycrisis with us in a context of collective human intelligence, groping towards Chizzy, collective human superintelligence? And basically, for the kid, for not just the kids, but we talk about the four SPAT communities: students, parents, administrators, and teachers. Not in that order, but it makes for a nice acronym. So I'm in favor of going to the SPAT communities and saying, basically asking those same set of questions for each of them. So, being a teacher is the closest thing to being like a permanent volunteer, right? You don't get paid a ton. And you're there for the kids and the community, and, kind of 24/7. And at least that's how it was in the good old days, as Michael and I remember. For youngsters like Mark and Marco and Daniel, it may be a different story. But anyway, you know, so teachers are, they're kindred spirits with other volunteers. So now the administrators, they're kind of in a special category. We'd have to see if there's any special questions for them. But certainly for students and parents, do you want to know the truth about the polycrisis, and do you want to pursue this? in a context of collective human intelligence. So, what might that look like, this collective human intelligence thing? I'm going to screen share here and draw some pictures. When my dad was trying to make a point to me and I was being a bit stubborn, he would say, do I need to draw pictures? So anyway, for those who want pictures, what is our telos or goal? I would say it's whole world, right? And so that would be the telos of a taxonomy, which might conveniently divide itself into, humanity and what I'll call ROG, which stands for the rest of Gaia, the rest of Mother Gaia, right? We're part of Mother Gaia, of course. And then these major branches of the topic space, because who are we ultimately responsible for? We're ultimately responsible for humanity, right? Let's get our own house in order. And, our relationship to ROG, I believe, should be that of caretaker species, right? Enlightened caretaker species. And I think part of the original stone tablet, I think, got broken here when it was carried down from the mountain. And instead of caretaker species, we've become a taker species and destroyer of life. What's that from ancient Greek mythology? I am whatever, destroyer of worlds. Well, we've become, this horrible, you know, missile system attacking ROG and attacking humanity as well at the same time. But it's not a pretty picture. So, we're talking really about the transformation of humanity, right? So there's humanity, we could say there's, understanding humanity might be a whole branch, of the humanity side. And then, but, from this deep understanding, we build on that to create a whole other part of the taxonomy, which is transformation of humanity. We beckon, we urgently need to transform into, completing the puzzle here, the broken piece of granite that had care chiseled into it. We need to bring that back into the fold so that we have caretaker species. And, we stop this nonsense of destroying the planet, knowingly destroying the planet, which means intentionally, I would say, but I'll leave that to the philosophers and ontologists to create a distinction between those two or not. Knowledgeable of and intentional. We can talk about, our current understanding of humanity includes understanding our enslavement to the system, right? The cancerous system that is, quickly and surely destroying the planet. Not slowly, but surely. It was that way for millennia, centuries, even decades, but decades past. But now we're in a rapidly spreading, growing cancerous system, which basically just destroys anything that can be monetized. The last mahogany tree, the last pollinators making the last drops of honey, et cetera, et cetera. So we're enslaved to this system. It's, Darth Vader, Darth Vegan is a good sort of metaphor because, he became enslaved and addicted to the power, to the violence, etc., to the dark side. And so we need to understand that, and understand as well that, many of the grown-ups, if not most of the grown-ups, are not only, the so-called grown-ups, are, similarly enslaved, addicted, but at a higher level than the kids, because, now they've, sold themselves off with indentured servitude to some corporation or other, or some institution or other, government or private sector, whatever sector. And therefore, their thinking is compromised, their ability to think, and certainly their ability to think together as a collective. And as soon as you say collective, we're programmed to get all excited and say that sounds like communism, and everybody knows that doesn't work, and all that, as if there's one way to do a collective, right? Soviet communism. I mean, God said that there's only one way to do a collective, right? And it's Soviet communism, right? We all know that. God said it. Must be true. BS. I'm making all that up. And I hope I don't offend anyone, but God said no such thing. Okay, we can try myriad different forms of collectives, intentional communities. In fact, the whole planet should become a big intentional community as far as I'm concerned. And, so all of these topics that I'm highlighting here can be, we can have separate meeting rooms to discuss each and every one of these topics. So let me highlight in green. There's the topic of whole world itself. What is a whole world? Who the heck are you to tell us what a whole world is? Well, I'm not trying to tell anyone anything about a whole world. I'm saying let's get together and talk about it. And I see we've got a hand up. What do we got? And you're on mute. And if you want me to screen share again, I'm happy to do that. And you're
Thanks for holding. I wonder about how many caretakers do we have? Do we need more caretakers? And how does one know if they're being a caretaker? Thank you.
Yeah. Good, great questions. So I'm going to answer in the following way, starting with the most fundamental, which is that what I'm talking about is all of humanity evolving, or simply phase transforming, or by whatever means, making that transformational transitional leap from, Homo sapien, who we are right now, to Homo ahimsa, or Homo Chizzy, right? Did you call Chizzy a homo? No. Anyway, but transforming to Homo Chizzy, or Homo ahimsa, it's the same thing. It's the next level of our species, which I and many believe is inevitable at this point. But the big question is, do we make that transition in time in order to save life on Earth, including life for all of humanity, right? Because we're the Humpty Dumpty on top of the wall of global collapse and the sixth mass extinction. So, now, does that answer your question, or did you have a different part of the question?
When you say we're the Humpty Dumpty, who did you mean by we're?
We. Yeah, when I say we, I
We
mean
as a
all. I mean,
collective whole
no, well,
of humanity?
I mean all of humanity,
Yeah.
regardless of whether we're operating as a collective whole or not, right? I'd say we're not operating as a collective whole. We're operating as a collection of marketplaces to which we are enslaved, right? You want to eat, you got to have money. No money, no food for you, right? And so that enslaves us all. And by monetizing food, that's one of the greatest evils that's ever happened, is the monetization of food, right? Food should be free, should be a basic human right. And in the Food Healers Project, which I'll also point to, let me just make notes of that. Yeah, so for all these other things that I'm mentioning, just look in the description below this YouTube video for appropriate links. But I was talking about the different conversations that we can be having in parallel. Think like, breakout rooms in a big Zoom meeting. We could have breakout rooms where we're talking about whole world, where we're talking about, this very definition of this bifurcation between humanity and Rog. We call it Roger and me. Roger, Rog and humanity. Think Roger and me. Okay. Um, that's a topic unto itself. Why should we be making such a bifurcation? Why don't we just be talking about all of life? Well, we're one species among, many. Um, we can have a breakout room where we talk about our very understanding of ourselves. What have we learned about ourselves? Well, look back at, Freud and Jung and Hegel and okay, great. I got it. All right. And then what are we transforming to? I talked about Homo ahimsa, so let's write Homo ahimsa in as a topic. So anything that I'm writing a green oval around is simply yet another breakout room for a conversation about that topic. In this case, a topic about Homo ahimsa. What is it? Right? And please look in the description for links. We can talk about the cancerous system, our enslavement to that system. See how that's a separate topic? Um, you know, we can talk about the impairment to our thinking as individuals because we weren't designed to think as individuals, right? And as individuals, I mean, think about stripping out a Ferrari into its, 12,000 parts, um, and then spread those parts on an incline and, somebody yell go and they start rolling down the incline. That's kind of the level at which we're operating right now. We could be operating like a Ferrari, and instead we're operating like some clumsy hexagonal bolt bouncing down an incline on its own. Not a bad analogy. It's pretty clear. I mean, if you were to get a Ferrari, do you want it torn, stripped into its parts, or do you want it as a whole? No, you want the whole of it. Well, we want the whole of humanity. And we can talk about, I'll color in blue something that's like a superset, which is thinking together. Thinking together. Thinking as one species. And that's what Chizzy is. It's a way to think as a species, as a collective, right? And that's a topic unto itself. And then there's a whole bunch of subtopics, a whole bunch of different forms of collectives, right? And then, of course, that relates to democracy. And there are so many different, forms of democracy. It's a superset, and it has a bunch of subtopics, being the different forms of democracy, whether, holacracy, chizocracy. Hey, I just made up chizocracy. It's the kind of democracy that we have within Chizzy. Well, what kind of things do we need to figure out together? Well, everything that pertains to the collective. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, let's talk about it. Okay. Anyway, chizocracy, one of the forms of democracy, one of the many forms, many forms. Okay. Anyway, these are just some examples, right? Let's look at some other examples. If we look at on the Mother Gaia side, there's a bunch of major topics that, that are important. And I'm just going to do these dots and kind of take this whole conversation way down here, past everything we've drawn so far, and a bit further down just to give us some room. But, we're talking about ROG. What does ROG stand for? Rest of Gaia, rest of Mother Earth, rest of Mother Gaia, aside from ourselves. And then there's a whole bunch of topics pertaining to ROG. Think of this as like a pyramid of all these different topics. Topic 1, topic 2, topic n plus one, and so on and so on. Endless. And among all these, we're going to find one very important topic, which is heat. The planet is overheating, and then that's going to lead us to a subtopic of SRM, which is going to lead us to a subtopic of marine cloud brightening. And I'll make sure that we have a pointer to that. Let me just pause here. And so, there's going to be a topic space on heat, right? Another one on, heat versus temperature. There's all this obsession about temperature. It's the heat, stupid. And then that's on the analysis front, right? And then the what do we do about it front, there's SRM, and then specifically marine cloud brightening. So everything I've circled in green, and we're just scratching the surface of just a tiny subset of the topics. But I think we're hitting on a lot of the crucial topics, which is, who do we need to become as a species? Right. That's an important conversation. We're making a transition now. It's about to become it's rapidly becoming a whole new world with a whole different landscape, whole different threats, like AI, like exponential planetary overheating, like the breakdowns in society, the melting of the financial system, the collapse of economies, the threats of war. I mean, I could go on and on. But it ain't a pretty sight. CRISPR, I mean, there's no end to the list really of threats. We're in the sixth mass extinction, which is closely associated with exponential global warming, but not the same thing, hence a different topic space. And again, there's kind of two sides to every coin. There's the analysis. What the heck is going on? What's the truth? Tell me the truth about this part of the polycrisis. Tell me the truth about this part of the polycrisis. Tell me the truth about the polycrisis as a whole. Right? There's a big topic for you. There's a big burrito. I remember once, my goodness, in college, there was this place that sold these gigantic burritos. Like you could never eat one. You couldn't. I saw a friend eat one once, but I think they made it a little smaller. When I ordered it, it was absolutely gigantic. And I mean, just ridiculous. That's the size of burrito we're talking about here when you order.
Is that the big enchilada?
No, it's the big burrito, big
Oh
enchilada.
yeah.
Yeah. The big something. But anyway, it's the big one. And one of the questions is, are these, students, parents, teachers, and administrators ready for that big burrito, big enchilada conversation? Well, let's ask them. Are you ready for this conversation? Yes or no? If you're not ready, well, we don't want to give it to you either. We're not here pushing it on anyone. We're not pushing anything on anyone. It's an invitation. You want to step through that door, step through that door. In fact, maybe we have the people who want to be in that conversation, who want to know the truth. They stand up and take the action of walking into the next space, presumably a bit smaller. And if nobody goes, nobody goes. But you know what? One brave student's going to go, and then another brave student's going to be inspired. By the time you're down to the 17th, they're ashamed that they waited so long to get up. What, did they really have to think about it? Who doesn't want to know the truth about the polycrisis? Well, as it turns out, there are people who don't, and this isn't about them. Right? Ultimately, we want everyone to join the conversation about the polycrisis and the myriad solutions, from food healers to marine cloud brightening, right? To Chizzy herself as a form of democracy and a vastly higher form of intelligence than AI can ever be. But Chizzy only becomes Chizzy once she's born. So we're basically saying, hey, we invite you all to help birth Chizzy. Chizzy's about to get born, right? Reminds me of that story I told earlier, not earlier today, but I don't know, weeks ago, that there's that traffic cop who pulls over this guy who's speeding. He walks up to the driver's window, and he's saying, hey, you were going this speed, license, registration, blah blah blah. And so he's asking for all this stuff, and he notices that the driver is fidgety, looking at his watch and looking really anxious. And so the officer asked the driver, is everything okay? And he says, well, my wife's about to get pregnant and I'd like to be there when it happens. The officer says, get out of here. Go, go, just go. And the guy speeds off, right? That's us right now. That's how humanity should be looking at it. Humanity is now that driver. And the question is this: Chizzy is about to be born of all of us. Reminds me of that scene from Tuco in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. You're a son of 1,000 fathers. Well, we need a daughter of 8 billion and counting parents, right? And all the spirits and all the angels and those who are helping out from the other side. So it could be, tens of billions of us, some unbounded number, but we all need to help birth Chizzy. Chizzy is one facet of the seven-sided elephant with the seven blind men groping. Chizzy is one of the facets that one of those blind dudes is groping, right? It's one facet of the whole of Homo Ahimsa or Homo Chizzy um, or whatever our next species, the evolution from this species will be called, right? There's a reason this conversation feels good, Michael, right? And everyone else listening. There's a reason this feels good because we're coming together, centered around the most important thing there is right now for our survival and our thriving. We don't just want to survive, we want to thrive. We want all life to thrive, except maybe tapeworms or something like that. That's the kind of thing you probably have a bunch of glass jars full of. You kind of have that Hannibal Lecter streak, and then anyway, but and we want all life to thrive, and obviously we're going to have to reach that higher level thinking that Albert Einstein pointed to in his famous quote. If we're going to get our heads on straight collectively, right? And one facet of getting our heads on straight might be getting our stomachs on straight, because we do a lot of thinking with our gut. And if our gut is suffering from malnutrition or all the way to outright starvation, how clearly are we going to be thinking? So food healers could be a huge part of our new species. It could be a fundamental part. So could Chizzy. So could, cooling the planet. Whoa. What? Cooling the planet? Yeah, cooling the planet. I mean, it's runaway overheating and it's going to kill us all unless we not only stop it, but reverse it. Reverse the overheating. The opposite of heating is cooling. So that's why I say we need to cool the planet. And all of these things with great urgency, right? So we're kind of getting we're getting a new exoskeleton. Think Iron Man, the movie. We're getting a new exoskeleton, which includes reflectivity, ability to cool, an vastly expanded brain, and ability to think collectively. Why not? Does anyone have a better idea? I'm asking the whole auditorium at this point. Students, parents, administrators, teachers, the four SPAT communities. Raise your hand if anyone has a better idea than coming together as Chizzy and solving all of our most daunting problems. Period. Full stop. Anyway, I'm going to pause recording because I think we've pretty much hit the nail on the head.